What's up, everybody? We got another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. My guest this week is the Don, the gangster of the Sticky Mafia, Jimmy Bradshaw. Jimmy, what's going on?
How's it going, man? How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I think we're both in a Woodstock recovery mode at this point, except
the Woodstock hangover.
except you're just taking care of the dog and you're jumping right into the Outlaw Streetcar reunion.
Yeah. Tyler's like, come on, man, get your stuff going. Let's go. You know how he is.
And it's officially that time of the year where it's pretty much all hands on deck and time to roll out, right?
Yeah. We with us, especially in what I do, the wintertime, I kind of just hang out, and thankfully Victor down at Bradenton gives me opportunities to come down once a month and do some of his big shows with Wade and them. So with that, it really works to my favor to where I still have some income in the wintertime and keep going and going. And then now is when it's, like you said, full on, everybody's open. So now I need like 4 or 5 of me, actually.
Need to start cloning assistants, right?
Yeah. I actually need to start forming a mafia now because it needs to be more than me,
There you go. Live the name, right? Live the name.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting. That was my first time going to Woodstock, first time going to a big no time event. Right. And it's always interesting that those have that's one of the things I'm gonna tell people. You got to go to one of these kinds of events now because it's a completely different feel and atmosphere. Yes. And it's mixed in with class cars too. So it's a big old
smorgasbord. A little bit of everything.
Fun. Yeah.
It's a little bit of everything. And that's what works for me pretty good because I have, roots in all forms of drag racing, with the grudge racing. And I mean, my dad ran a track here in Maryland and it was pretty much the grudge track of Maryland. So that's where I came from, and then, moving through, I went class race, doing some prep jobs for class racing and stuff like that. And bracket racing, I'm a bracket racer myself. So I go through all that type of stuff. So I get to dip and dab everywhere, and it's fun.
Yeah, you're a multidiscipline person, and it's interesting that we're starting to really for the past few years, we've seen this emergence of slick tire and radial tire events being put together, where in the past that was unheard of. But now it seems like you prep guys have got this magical formula figured out where you can have both.
Technology for everybody, technology for not only the cars, but us as far as our equipment as well. A rotator plays a big play in all that allows us to be able to do them types of 2 different tires on the same racetrack because you can manipulate the racetrack for what you need on the tire. And also it goes hand in hand with the tuners and stuff like that because now they've figured out how to run the big tire cars on a much stickier racetrack. And of course, if you can get it to accelerate faster, it's going to be faster. So they're starting to dig being on a tighter track now too because they can get them bad boys moving. I mean, right now you have a big tire car going 9 flat to the 60, and radial racing, if you're trying to break records right now, you need to be 880, 890 to the 60 if you're trying to break the RVW record right now.
It was crazy seeing some of the tire shake marks that were coming from those slick tire cars. And I commented to another media guy, it looks like someone drove a tractor down the track with the tracks in it late. I was like, that had to get their attention real fast.
Oh yeah. You see the people that are used to running on certain types of tracks. And I see it a lot because it takes them a good couple times to get down the racetrack because it's not something they're used to. They're used to more of a looser track. So when they come to a track that is substantially tighter because it's pretty much radial, they have to swing some bars and do some stuff like that for sure.
Now, you've done a little bit of everything in the racing industry. Some people might not necessarily know exactly all you've done. Talk about your kind of career path and what brought you to the point of being a travel prep person for hire.
I kind of have touched everywhere now that I really think about it. I mean, I started in bracket racing. My father was a bracket racer, so that's where I was introduced in the racing at. And kind of progressed from there. I bracket raced myself. Then the same track my dad started running, so I was helping him do that. And the track prep part of it actually started, I remember vaguely, I was in the garage working on the Camaro that I was racing for my dad at the time. And he comes in and he goes, the track prep guy that I have, he's got a really busy schedule this year, and I don't know if it's going to work out. Would you be willing to step up and do some track prep? You've pretty much been out there and have done it. What do you think? Well, I know what it's like when it's 100 degrees outside and you're out there working, cleaning up oil and all that stuff. And then to try to get into a race car, I was like, Dad, I don't think I want to get involved with this. You know what I mean? He's like, no, it'll be fine. That won't happen. I was like, yeah, I don't know. So I, of course, tried it and when it's all said and done, I was out there at 100-degree heat cleaning up. As a matter of fact, he had a 10 grander there that I was racing in. And just my luck, a guy comes out 2 cars ahead of me. The oil filter comes off and it oils the track down from burnout box to 330. Oh. And I'm 2 cars back in a 10 grander. It's 100 degrees out. So that exact scenario took place because I'm out there cleaning up the track. Right about when we got it ready, I went over to the guys and I was like, listen, I need like 5 minutes to try to like wipe the sweat off of me and get my mind together before I get into the car to run first round of this 10 grander and even have a chance. So even at that time, I had to wear multiple hats. But anyway, moving forward, so I really started bracket racing and helping my dad at Capital. And then when I found out the Darlington Dragway was taken over by Russell Miller, Facebook was actually how that all happened. Nobody really knows that, but it was Facebook. So if you really want to do something, you can do it any way possible. Because I actually wrote a Facebook message to Russell talking about or asking him, hey, if you need any help down there, I'm willing to do it. My father and I worked together on kind of moving this track around and bringing it back full circle up here in Maryland. So I used them same principles to go down there and kind of explained it to him. And he kind of asked some questions, you know, where are you from and all that type of stuff. And I told him, and he says, all right, this was like in December. March, he messaged me back, hey, you want to come down and check it out? So I went down there and they had a little pro mod race and I stayed down there for like a day or so and checked it all out. Came back and we got to talking and so on and so forth and worked out a deal. And before you know it, I think March of 2016, I moved to Darlington. No, May, I'm lying to you. May. Because my very first race at the racetrack, I arrived on Wednesday or Thursday, because I had actually problems with my truck on the way down there. So I got there a little late. This is when Street Outlaws first came out. They had one of their Street Outlaws events, and it was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them at the same time. We had 7,500 people there for the event. This is my first day, my very first day. Like, I couldn't even tell you where the bathrooms were. So it was either sink or swim day one, you know? And when I went into it, I kind of pulled the team together and I said, listen, you guys have been doing this for a long time. Of course, things are going to change because that's why I'm brought in here, but I'm not going to come right in and force you to do everything. I'm going to see what you're doing. We're going to talk about what we can do to make it better or more efficient and move on. It's not going to be come in and clean house because I don't believe in doing that unless you find that you really have to after the fact. So I was at Darlington for probably, so let me skip back. No, I've left out a whole thing. When I was 19, I went pro stock racing. Well, I was a clutch guy for Jim Cunningham, the same guy that owned Capital Raceway. My buddy, my really good friend, it was his uncle, and he was kind of driving for him at the time. And he come to me and was like, hey, you want to, you know, they knew I had mechanical abilities and stuff. So he said, you want to go on this team? Again, very first time ever working on a pro stock car was at the race. Like servicing the car. I'm learning how to work on the car as I'm servicing it between rounds. Like, okay, you got to learn how to do this. And, you know, you don't have all day to do that. So it was kind of hands on there. I did that on and off for probably 2005, I think. And then my family owns auto repair shop. So I was there for a couple of years on and off and worked some government stuff and then Capital and then Darlington. So that's where I was at Darlington, and then I was there until 2018. And then we had a separation. And then I went from, it was kind of, what do I do now? Well, I made a name for myself at Darlington as far as track prep. That's where I really we helped each other shine in that situation, is the way I look at it. I brought them back to life and they put me on the map being at Darlington. So actually, I had people calling me, asking me if I'd go do events of theirs. And I said, well, let's try it. So one thing led to another, and here I am now. I'm able to, I was fortunate enough to where my schedule's pretty full through this year, and that's from people calling me on this deal. So it's kind of like being a quarterback. You got to take it while you're hot, because you're not always going to be hot, and realize that this is only going to last so long, and you got to do it while you can and be smart about it, and hopefully segue it into a career that you can, you know, ride off into the sunset with. So that's pretty much how it's happened with me in racing.
And that's interesting because, you know, running a drag strip is easy for anybody that's never done it. Yes. And
I mean, everybody knows how to do it online.
Yeah, everybody on the internet's an expert. And
I just hear some of the stuff, and sometimes you just got to shake your head and go, you know what, buddy? You might have a point, knowing that they're dead wrong. But to save the argument and the nonsense, you're like, you know what, buddy? Just cool. We'll try it out.
Well, from running a track and kind of doing this whole deal, from that management point of view, what does it take to have a successful venue?
Giving your life away. I mean, honestly, that's what people don't understand when it comes to, and that's what they need to respect when it comes to track managers and owners, and especially managers, because they're there 24/7. When I did it at Darlington, in order to make that place successful, it was everything I could give. There's no birthdays. There's no, holidays. I mean, there is if it's during the week or whatever, but there's no weddings. There's no family time. There's nothing like that. You know what I mean? It's racetrack. And if somebody, for instance, Ricky Smith was in Woodstock. If Ricky Smith calls you at 11 o'clock at night and tells you he wants to test tomorrow, this is how you make your living. And this is how that owner of that facility wants you to make your living. You answer that phone call and then you figure out how you're going to test tomorrow or whatever the case may be. So it's a life, man. I mean, it really, I've had opportunities to manage other facilities, and that's been the thing that's kind of weighed in the back of my mind. Do I want to give my life up again? Right now I have an opportunity to do what I love doing what I'm doing right now. I go out, I prep tracks, I go all over the country, I meet different people, I get to stay with some good people. My networking is getting bigger and bigger. So I love what I'm doing, and I don't have to work. I mean, today I'm getting ready to leave for another trip, but I mean, Mondays, my Fridays for the most part, or Saturdays. I'm fortunate enough to where I don't have to work every single day and stuff like that. So when I look at it on that standpoint, why do I want to go manage somebody's facility and make a fraction of what I make now and have all the responsibility, all the heartache, all the headache, all the nonsense? I mean, I'm a bracket racer myself, but bracket racers are the hardest people in the world to please. And anybody, I mean, I know that's why I kind of get along with them, because I'm like, dude, really, like, I know what you're doing here. I know manipulation. Come on. And so it's different. It really is. But it really comes down to, you have to have communication. Communication is what you need to be successful and have a successful venue, because at any given time you have to have, I mean, smaller tracks, they can probably get away with 10, 15 people, a day. But I mean, bigger tracks, I mean, you're 100. I can't even remember what Bader has for his night of fire up there. I heard it's a couple hundred over the course of the week. I don't know if it's over the course of the event employees that he has. So that's a couple hundred personalities, a couple hundred directions, a couple hundred different. A racetrack is a bunch of different entities all in one. You have a restaurant with your snack bar. You have a racing surface. You have we're kings of entertainment, but we're in drag racing. And anybody that's in drag racing knows that it's very short. You know what I mean? So you have a pro mod event that comes in. I've had promoters come to me and be like, hey, I'm going to come to you. I want to give you 15 pro mods, but I want you to pay 10 grand. All right, sounds great. But if we really factor this down in the day, if you're bringing me 10 or 15 pro mods, you're giving me about 2 or 3 hours entertainment throughout the whole entire day. What am I going to do for these fans that I'm bringing in here for the other, 5 hours, 10 hours? You know what I mean? It's really one of them things. You have to have entertainment for the all day. And that's where everybody has to come together and have a complete show. That's why places like Woodstock, because they have that. That's why that is the way that it is, because you have to have entertainment through the fans throughout the whole day. And that's why they're bringing all these forms of racing together, because there's different crowds. If you noticed at Woodstock, not to get off the subject, but if you noticed at Woodstock, you kind of had two different crowds of people. You had your people that came in during the daytime, which was more with your class racing and all that stuff. They come to watch your Ricky Smiths and all that good stuff. But then as it went on, you had the grudge scene start to come in, and it kind of evolved into that. And that's the electrifying thing about Woodstock that makes Woodstock and makes it different from other events, is because it's a combination of two different genres of racing that come together. And when they kind of stay together for that little bit of time, that atmosphere is electrifying, and that's magic sometimes. So you gotta be a very good promoter to understand how to entertain, but not blow your budget at the same time. And drag racing and running a venue is just it's so many different things that you have to make sure work together. Even at Woodstock, people look at it and they'll go, "That's a great event." And even any event that you see that is ran super smoothly. Most of Tyler's events are ran smoothly. He's like the king of race directing. Like, in my opinion, Tyler is on a whole nother level when it comes to race directing and all that type of stuff. And even his events that run so smooth, the commotion that's on the backside of putting out this fire, that fire, this fire, because it's nonstop. I mean, and you have to be able to think on the fly, and you have to surround yourself with the people to be able to follow through with the vision that you have. So without them key things, I think it's, and that's what's so hard nowadays, is to get all them key things together, you know, and it takes years to put them pieces together. And sometimes nowadays the personalities don't last that long. You know, an owner wants a track manager to come in there and turn the place around in 2 years, and then it's magic, you know, and it doesn't work like that. It takes years to build this stuff. You know, you're talking 5-10 year plans, you know? So time, communication, and the right people.
Well, kind of going off of that too, you know, big events can be pretty tough animals to tame. I've been involved in help put on big events, and you said there's lots of fires and things that are happening all at once. You know, what goes into creating a successful event, you know, on the front end, during the event, and then even after?
The front end part of it is promotion. You know, that's the biggest thing, and we've gotten a lot of help with it now with social media. Before, it was you were out there handing flyers out and going to other people's events and passing flyers out without making sure you're not stepping on anybody's toes and all that good stuff. Now with social media, it's click a button. You got Instagram, you know, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else. I don't even know. I don't use half of them, but you have all these different deals now and even with you guys, you know, with these podcasts, I mean, this is chances for people to come in and promote their races or their tracks and stuff like that, because you are a zeroed in audience of drag racing. You know what I mean? So for a promoter that wants to promote something, it would be smart for them to say, hey, how much for a podcast episode? Because I got an event coming up in a month. I want to push it harder. However many you can give him data on what the outreach of that, you know what I mean? And that's the main thing with stuck on the front end of the event. You have to have the right promotion, the right outreach, and all that stuff. And a lot of people don't do all that research to see how they're spending their money the best and how they're getting the most outreach. There was many times I've been with me traveling, I've been to so many different places, and I'll stop in at a little store 5 minutes from the track, and they'll ask, you know, what my business is or whatever, and I'll tell them what I'm there doing, and they're like, "Oh, there's a race down the road." And I mean, this isn't in the racing world. We were advertising all over the internet, and everybody in drag racing knows, but the local guy down the road doesn't know anything about it and has lived there for 30 years, and that's just something that you're going to find everywhere. So you have to really find out what the outreach is. Sometimes flyers is the best thing, because when you go into them small town places, they don't have internet like we do. I mean, really, these small town places are, not to be out of the way, but I call them like 1996. Like, they're just little mom and pop places, and that's what they are, and that's what they'll always be. And so you have to be able to reach them the way that they're, I guess, able to be reached out to. So on the front side of it's your promotion, putting it together as far as making it smart enough for the time. And what I mean by that is making sure you have the entertainment throughout the day. You got to make sure that when the racer comes, he's going to come and feel like he's going to make a trip for a worthwhile event. So, I mean, like, you got Roger Holder that comes from California over to the East Coast all the time to go to like Ducks event and Bradenton and stuff like that. That's from California, you know, but he's coming over. He wouldn't come over for a 2-day event. He's coming over for 3, 4, 5-day events. So in order to get the really big racers from all over the country, you have to make it worth their while in order to have them come. That's why Woodstock and Donald and Tyler and all them races are 3, 4, 5 days long, because with the cars nowadays, sometimes they take a day or two of testing to get it sorted out to be able to be in competition mode for the other cars around. So the transport, or so it has to be something where it's a multi-day race in order to have people want to transport their cars from all over. So in order to do that, you got to be able to plan and make sure that you don't overbook the event to where you're never getting the stuff done, because the worst thing you can ever do in an event is never finish. That's the absolute killer worst thing ever, is not finish. Like, now, if weather's playing a part or some unfortunate stuff, then yeah, you can't. Then everybody understands. But if you just flat out can't finish it, it was poor planning. So you got to make sure everything throughout the flow of the event is planned proper. Then you got to make sure you get the right people there. So then you got to go out to your racers, and sometimes with your racers, you got to talk with them and try to work some things out. I mean, it's a business for everybody. It really is. So sometimes you have to work a deal with the racer and say, hey, I'll give you some gas money if you want to come. You know what I mean? Or something or another to help with what you can do. After that, then it comes race day. And race day again is 7Ps, 6 or 7Ps. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. And so many times I've went to some tracks and I'm like, so what's the plan for today? I don't know. Okay. And I mean, these are my smaller little tracks that I do my little races. I still do my little races too. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, okay, I already know how this is going to go. It's going to be totally wild and crazy. Let me go ahead and take a big old bite of patience here, because that's just what it's going to take for today, because there's going to be dumb crap happening all day long. It's funny when you come from an event like Tyler's, where it's boom, 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 and it's so professional. And then you go to like some little backtrack that you're doing out in the middle of the night, you know what I mean? And it's so different. And for me, I have to adjust to the way everything's ran and stuff like that, and understand that, hey, this is just the way it is. You know what I mean? And so you really, man, I know I'm getting off track, but that's because there's so many things to actually run into an event. And that's what people don't understand. They think that they can just pick a date, hire me, do some fancy flyer, throw it on the internet, and boom, they're the next Mike Hill. You know what I mean? And it don't happen like that. Mike Hill has been doing this stuff forever. He is the OG, one of the OGs of grudge racing. You know what I mean? And he's the man to ask for that, because he's done it. But from what I've seen, it's just the race day is all about, and you have to please the racers, man. Like, you have to be able to keep everything cool, keep everything on time. But in the same hand, I've seen that happen before too, where you're so caught up in keeping the show moving the way that you want it to move, that you start to be out of the way, because your patience is not sticking there, and you're being out of the way to some of the racers. And you gotta just be a good person all the way around. So it's really hard to nail what actually makes a good event an event. It's a combination of a million things. The right people. You have to know the right people. There's people that won't come to races just because they don't like you. And it don't matter how much you pay them. It doesn't matter. I mean, the real thing in the racing world is it's personalities too. If people just don't like you, they ain't going to support you. So if you go out there and you do a bad thing in drag racing and then you want to be a promoter, you can't do that. So it really takes, and now with social media, I mean, everybody's lives are pretty much plastered all over the world. So you have to make sure, even when you're not promoting, you're doing the right thing, because if not, it can come around and creep and get you on the backside of that. So to have a successful event, it's a combination of a million things, and luck. luck is the big thing, because you can do all that and then it rains.
And they're done that.
I've done it plenty of times.
Well, speaking of luck, we're very lucky on this podcast to have some great sponsors like Performance Distributors. The company allows you to feel the difference, not just ignite a spark. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, their ignition systems are designed and manufactured under the most stringent of guidelines. In fact, the owner, Steve Davis, told us their systems are designed as if they're running in their own vehicles, because they are. One of the products you may already know from them is their DUI line of distributors, the first and one of the best HEI distributors on the market. Their machine-calibrated timing curves provide instant throttle response and eliminate damaging engine detonation. For those of you with late model vehicles, their Sultans of Spark ignition coils are based on DUI technology, so they can accommodate wider plug laps, giving you more voltage. So check out performancedistributors.com. And not only do we promote them, I use them on my own vehicles and my projects. So got that going. Now, Jimmy, every track has a personality. I mean, I've been all over the place. I've been, from Norwalk to tiny little hole in the wall tracks. I've got my own opinion on this, but what do you think makes a good track for fans and racers and, to have an event? Something that, you got to have certain things to make a good event. What does that track have to have, in your opinion, to be, special?
History. I think history is one of the big things. That's why Darlington does really good. It's the history there. I mean, that place is one of the first pro mod, in the fives, and I think the first to 200 or something. South Georgia has some pretty good. Gainesville's always a big racer in HRA because of the history there. Pomona, so I think history is number one. Just like anything, in order to have a good event, you got the foundation of it is the place you're having it. So if you're starting off an event and going to have a huge event, the location is key, and it's got to have history. If you try to go to, if Keith was trying to have Woodstock at, I don't know, some track nobody ever heard of, the first thing you're going to have is the racers going, well, how good's the track? You know what I mean? Is it enough stopping distance? Do they have enough equipment? Do they have, like, what if it rains, can they even get going? So location is key, number one. There's different promoters and even with what I do, they'll come to me and they'll explain what they're trying to do, and they'll go, what track am I, where do I need to go to do this? And there's only so many, because demographics big time too. There's some really big South Georgia is one of them tracks. Duck has one of the biggest radio races in the world. But then some of their other races you never even hear about, you know what I mean? And that's been something that's been Duck built that for however many years, 12 years. So that's 12 years worth of his investment that's made that what it is. There's other guys that have went into South Georgia and tried to do the same thing, and I don't hear it. You know what I mean? So it's location, and then building the foundation after you find a location, and that fits his venue very good because of where it's located and what time when he has it. He has that in February. There's only so many tracks in February that we can run in the United States, and they're south. Well, then you got to look at however many cars he has, however many people. If he tries to take that race to a smaller venue, he creates so many more nightmares.
Havoc.
Yes, to where he knows what he's going into right now. It's almost like riding a bike for him right now, to where if he takes that somewhere, there's all these different avenues. So location is number one. You got to make sure that it suits all your needs. So before you sign that contract or do anything, you need to think about, okay, how many cars am I expecting? My parking, and the smart promoters do that. They go to these tracks before they do anything, and they look at them. They just don't call a track and say, okay, how much is it to rent your racetrack? Oh yeah, no problem. Sign me up. And this is what I'm going to do. That happens, but that's people that are just getting into the game. But to have a successful location, history, location. Let me think here. I had some notes. I did write something down.
Well, I think part of it too is that the demographic you're going for as well.
Yes.
Because you can't go to a track that's known for grudge racing and you're going to try to put on a big bracket race and expect a gate, or vice versa. It's just, it's not going to happen. The base isn't there.
Well, yeah. And that's the thing. It's all like, so I don't know if people know this, Darlington, South Georgia, and Rockingham, I believe, are all built by the same guy. And the reason and the trademark there is the concrete stands built into the wall. And doing that, it kind of creates a different atmosphere. Rockingham was always great like that with ADRL back in the ADRL days. That place was on fire. If you went back and looked at some of the pictures back in ADRL and all the other pro mod days at Rockingham, it was huge, and now you have, and that's why NHRA goes to Gainesville and stuff, because the demographic, you have to be able to hit it while it's hot. So that's another key. During the wintertime, you're down south. That's about the only thing you can do. So down there, that's when Florida's hot. That's when they do all the racing, because it's cooler. You're not gonna have a big event. Like Duck wouldn't try to have a big event in Florida in July.
Oh no.
It's like suicide. You know what I mean? Like I have a race in Florida, and that was the very first question I asked. It's in July. I am committing suicide, I think. But the very first thing I said was, hey, this is a nighttime race, right? If it's daytime, I have no interest whatsoever. Well, why not? Well, because it's suicide for me. Like, you want me to try to get radio cars down a 150-degree track with 100% humidity, and it'll rain every 5 minutes. Like, this is no fun for me. I don't put myself in them situations. Doing it at nighttime, I'm still putting myself in some dumb stuff, but I guess it's a challenge, and not just I'm hard-headed, so I don't know, I guess, whatever. But the demographic is very, 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 very key. again, we go back to the track surfaces. I mean, all these things you have to really make sure they go together, because if they don't, I've seen big races that they didn't have great surfaces and it was failure, and they had all the right pieces in the place, but it didn't work out because of that. I mean, rain will destroy an event. There's so many things that'll destroy an event. And I don't think place that it's very different racing. When I'm on the East Coast and I do my stuff over here compared to when I go to the West Coast, it's like night and day.
Oh yeah.
Radial racing on the West Coast is
dead,
obsolete. I go to the West Coast, and when I go out there, the tracks out there try to half kill me, because in order to radial race, you're spraying glue down, and they're like, "What's going on? Like, we can't do this." And I'm like, in order for these race cars to go down this racetrack, this is what you have to do. And God forbid if you pull a rock out of their concrete, now the springs are popping out. And I mean, this is normal radial racing for me. I mean, when we're radial racing, we're putting these racetracks on the edge. I mean, you'll see us out there knocking rocks out of the cars because it's literally pulling the aggregate out of the concrete. I mean, it's hard on these things. I mean, I'll probably be like rolling around in a wheelchair because I won't be able to walk because of walking on glue for, now 10 years or whatever. So, hold on one sec. I got a car coming fast.
Oh, it wasn't loud.
But having the surfaces and stuff like that, I mean, again, it's one of them things to where, oh crap. Sorry, I was getting ready to call you on the damn thing. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm getting ready to call him. Hold on, look at some of the things here.
Well, yeah, I think it comes down to the events too that you're trying to, like, where you're trying to put at and what you're trying to do, and even the size of the venue and the type of the venue, because you could go, like, people used to always comment at Joliet for the NMCA NMRA Super Bowl, it looks like there's nobody here. Well, that's because that place can hold 30,000 people. You got to remember that this is not, Norwalk's the same way. You put 10,000 people in Norwalk and it doesn't look like there's a lot of people.
That's a very good point. Yeah. I've had again, people come from, you put two tracks like Piedmont and Darlington, both great tracks, but you put 1,500 people in Piedmont, it looks packed. You put 1,500 in Darlington and they're like, where's everybody at? And that again creates the excitement. You take 1,500 people and put them in a smaller space, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a little wild, but then you spread them all out and it's like, what are we doing here? So you have to pick your venue for what you think you can accomplish. If you think you're going to go out there and rule the world and don't know anything about promoting, but you just have tons of money, you can make yourself look really, really foolish because you go rent this track that can hold, 500 cars and 10,000 people, and you only get 100 cars and 1,500 people. It's like, you overspent here, and you kill your own event because it looks bad. You have to grow with it, and that's the biggest thing with promoting and all that stuff, and the success of everything. It's really knowing the business and knowing how not to overstep, I guess is the best way to put it. You don't want to go and get yourself a big track and not be able to pull it off, because then you look like you failed, even though you were successful. You could be successful and be in the green and made some money, and it still looks like a failure because of the place looks empty,
That's what blew me away when I went to the first Night Under Fire up at Norwalk. Yeah. And I've seen that place pretty packed for an NHRA event, but not like it was at the Night of Fire. That was like something.
That's like them things. And I've never been to one, but them events are like, from what I hear, like that's the mecca of entertainment and drag racing. Like that is just, and I wish I need to go do it, because I'm sitting here trying to tell somebody else, if you get a chance to go experience, and I need to do it myself, because I hear it's just a whole nother world. Like the baiters are like where my hand is out of the screen. That's where they are as far as promoting and in the drag racing world. Like they are the top.
So I raced up at I've been to a lot of NMCA races, crewed, covered them. I raced at an event up at Norwalk.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I pulled my car around the corner to go in the water box, and there's Bill Bader Jr. himself laying the water down in the water box because it had to be done. And he was wearing the uniform.
I do the same thing
everybody else wears. And a lot of people don't realize that for a good track environment like that, you have your leaders. They are there elbows deep doing what they got to do.
the way I always feel is how do I tell somebody else what to do if I can't do it myself? You know what I mean? And that's how I think I've been somewhat successful in managing, because I know every entity. I started out handing out tickets in a ticket booth when I was like 8 years old. You know what I mean? And then I worked in the water box. And then I did, I used to come in when I was a teenager. I'd go to the Capitol Raceway and I would scrape the track during the week to make money to go out with my friends during the weekend. That was my thing. The Cunninghams would come in. I'd come in during the weekend after school, and I'd go out and scrape the track. And I was like, hey, I'm getting tan and making whatever it was nothing back then, but it was to a teenager. I was rich, and nobody messed with me. I'd go in and put my earphones on and just be in my own little thing. So maybe that was my calling from ages ago. Like I knew what I was doing at teenager, but I really didn't know, so I think it's I lost my train of thought. Shit.
It happens.
I was right there and I looked over.
Well, I'll throw another question at you here is, it's always fascinating to me to see this and hear, like, get someone's opinion that actually does it. What goes into creating a good surface? Because it fascinates me to like watch what you guys do, because you look like greenskeepers at a golf course and what you're trying to do. And like I use Pooch as an example. He'll be sitting there like just, I'm trying to figure out what he's looking at, and then he'll like walk up, look at the track, like looks like he kicks it for a second, then he gets on his radio and they do something. Like, what are you guys doing to make these track surfaces work, to educate people so they understand what goes into it?
So there's a little more. So your track, okay. So the way it normally starts is when I go into an event. I'll start it this way. When I go into an event, the first thing I do, I try to ask the tracks to scrape a certain amount of the track for me, because I don't think it's fair that I have to go in and scrape the track that they may have been running on for a month or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's not fair for the promoter to have to come in and pay me to do something that the track should be doing regardless for their event. So I go in, because sometimes I go into some bad situations, and if I had to scrape them, my timelines wouldn't even work for the event to take place, and the promoter would have to pay me a whole nother day. And so they're not going to do that. So the very first thing is I'll go in, hopefully they scraped it. I'll look at the scrape job, see what they did. The best way I can put doing track prep, and I'm not a painter or whatever, it's like body and paint. If your body work is superior, but your painter is terrible, it's going to be a bad paint job. So if you put all if you spend the time and make your base, when you're building your racetrack with the drag tractor and putting the rubber down, and you make that really nice, and then you overspray it, you can tear it all up. Same, and also in body work, if you have a great painter and a terrible body man, it ain't going to work. Well, if you go out there and you scrape the track and you hop on the tractor for 5 minutes and drive around in circles, I call them tractor drivers. They don't want to do any work on the racetrack during the week because nobody's there to watch them. They get on during the week when everybody's there, and they want to drive it for 5 minutes and spray some glue and then wonder why it don't work. And it's all the work. People, when you come to an event, you might see me sitting on the tractor, riding around on a scooter, hanging out, or whatever the case may be, if things are going well, which is really never, never. But if they are, that's because of the hours and hours and hours and hours I put in the racetrack before a fan came through the gate, before a race car was even put on the racetrack. I mean, Tyler right now is at VMP doing work on the track right now. He's scraping one side of OSCR because he's testing on the other side. And we'll be there tomorrow putting the track together for testing on Wednesday. And even then, the track still could take a day or two to not be green anymore, is what we call it. So you come in, you scrape, you start putting your base down. You're putting your base down, and that for me can be anywhere from 3-4 hours to a full day of just tractor driving. And it's tractor driving and spraying chemicals and putting stuff down. And I ain't gonna tell them all because that's what I get paid to do. But it's kind of just putting down your chemicals and doing. You're looking for things because there's a certain thickness you kind of want, depending on the racetrack and the type of racing you're doing. Because if you take and spray a bunch of rubber and a little bit of, or a bunch of glue and a little bit of rubber, it doesn't have the depth to be able to hold all that stickiness. So the tire to rubber adhesion is going to be better than the concrete to rubber, and it'll stick to the tire and pull it off. And that's why you get shit all over the track, or sorry, where you get like I call it spidering, where they're peeling all over the place. That's most of the time an oversprayed track or a track that won't hold rubber. Sometimes my tracks will look oversprayed because they won't hold the rubber that they're supposed to. And based on the type of racing we're doing, I know I got to have enough glue down there to do it. And I'm at that point in time, you're hoping that the glue helps you at that point, to get past it. So putting down the base with the tractor is very, very essential. And that goes back to your scraping. If your scraping's crap, it ain't going to work. So you have to go and start with a nice, flat, scraped, smooth surface. You start putting your rubber down, and then it's based on application of if you're radial racing or if you're big tire racing. Most of the tracks, honestly, from the Christmas tree out, whether it's radial or big tire, are the same. The only difference is the first 40 feet. The big tire car needs little wheel speed, but now they're starting to run them cars like radials, and they're just getting them to roll off rather than spin the tire when they're leaving. So it's even allowing us to kind of make the tracks the same back and forth, where it's stickier. But when it comes to the big tire stuff, you can get away with not being you can get away sometimes with knowing a lot less about track prep and getting away because the tire is going to save you. We're radial racing. It's the tire, the glue, and the base. And if you don't know what you're doing, the cars ain't moving anywhere. So you really have to know what kind of cars you have coming and know how to spray for them. I mean, Darlington, I had a little issue. I goofed up and it got away from me for a minute. And with that type of an event, a lot of people are afraid to try different things. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you try something and it don't work and it's like, all right, what do I do now? Well, a lot of people with the pressure of that, if I try something, this could go totally the wrong way and get worse. And you definitely don't want that to happen when you got the stands packed with people and cars there. But with experience and just, you gotta, Wade's one of them guys. Wade will try anything. I love working with him because he's like, it ain't working, let's do this. And I mean, I don't understand why people try to do insanity. Like, if the track ain't working, they'll keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And it's like, it's not going to change, man. Like, it's doing this because it doesn't like this way, this style of what you're doing. Every track is different. I travel all over the country. Every racetrack is different. There's no two the same. I mean, I have to use different principles in every track I go to. And it's like tuning a new car every single weekend. And I'm expected to get there and knock it out of the park on like day one. Because sometimes I'm only at a race for one day. So I have that day to get through and try to make it as best I can. And sometimes it starts not good, and sometimes it starts really good. So you really have to know the principles of scrape, drag, spray, and what they do and how it can affect it. Like, for instance, when you're saying Pooch goes out there and might kick the track. Well, a lot of times if you see a guy going out there and spinning his foot, they're seeing how tight the track is. And what you can do at times is during the summer, like you've seen me at Darlington this weekend, I'd go out there and just drag it and not spray it. Well, in the middle of the day, sometimes with the heat on it, it'll start to get slimy. Well, you can put your foot on it and twist it and it'll twist right away. I can take that drag tractor and run over it a couple times and it's almost like stretching the rubber. It tightens it back up. And you can go out there and tighten up and send some more cars. And then it'll do it again. And then you can, and that's a lot of times during the daytime when you have like, when you get a track temperature over like 120, 130, you're not going to start applying the glue like you were before. And sometimes you're not even going to spray at all. I mean, there was times at nighttime I would have to spray between every class or every other class, but during the daytime, I didn't spray all day. If you don't have that experience or know what to do, it's going to totally destroy your surface, because if you try to do the same thing daytime and nighttime, by the day 4 or 5, it's going to be so much glue on that racetrack that it's just going to be unbearable and it's going to get away from you and you're going to have to scrape it all off and start over.
When I see the sprayer come out in the heat of the day, I get very nervous. And I've been at some tracks that like they don't necessarily know what's going on.
Sometimes I'll go out there and you'll see me go like 50 miles as fast as a four-wheeler will go. I do that just for peace of mind because some tuners, and I get it, I'm like that too. They just need to see the machine out there. So if I get it fast as can be, it just kind of fogs out there. It's not really anything. It just kind of puts a little bit on the top. I can turn pressures down. I can do a bunch of stuff just to kind of give us all a little bit of peace of mind without destroying the racetrack. So there's a whole lot of different things you can do to manipulate the racetracks. And that's what people like me, Pooch, Tyler, Kurt Johnson, all of us, we know, okay, well, we can turn the pressure down and it'll do this, or we can add more alcohol to the glue and it'll do this, or we can add more, take the alcohol away and it'll do this, or the rotator does this to the track. The flat drag does this to the track. Some tracks you can't run rotators on in the middle of the day because it actually starts smearing the rubber, like kind of like pulls it off. It just makes it really thin. So sometimes during the daytime, you can't run a rotator like you would like to. So you have to be able to finesse it and manipulate it. So key to successful track prep and knowing it is just experience, man. Me being on the road has helped me tremendously because I've been putting these hot seats every weekend. Like I go to a different racetrack every single weekend. Sometimes I wish I had like a home track because it's like, man, it would just be kind of like relieving because you almost know what to expect. You know, after you work on it so many times, it's like, okay, I know the quirks of it. I know what it does like. I know what it doesn't like. But for me, every single weekend, especially my first year, most all the tracks were new. So I didn't, everything I went into, it was like going into blindfolded. But now that I've been doing it for a couple of years, I'm repeating these tracks and I know, okay, this track don't like this one don't like this. So my success is getting better as the years go on, I guess, because I'm getting more and more experience doing it. But I'm happy with it because it's teaching me a whole lot of things. It's teaching me a whole lot of things in track prep that a lot of guys that are sticking at one track every weekend are not learning because they're not being put in these situations. You know, I go to some tracks and work with some guys and they're like, I never even knew that. And I'm like, yeah, me neither, until I was talking to some. The crazy thing is like some backwoods track that nobody hears about knows this crazy super little trick that they showed me. You know what I mean? So sometimes you find out some of the coolest, craziest things with them little old tracks. You know, that's where I come from, and I'm a little track guy. Like I think when I'm all said and done, like I just want to have like a little tiny track that I can do some like testing on and just not worry about all the crazy stuff.
Well, Jimmy, before we move into our final part of the show here, we got to thank Procharger for being on board with us. For 25 years, Procharger has been the industry leading aftermarket supercharger manufacturer by designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, and advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market. No matter if you're looking for a 3,500 horsepower record-setting Pro Mod or a DIY system for your street car, truck, or even motorcycle, Procharger has the perfect system for you. For more information on all the ways that you can bolt 40, 50, 60, or even 100% more power to your ride, visit Procharger.com. Now, you're a racer, been raised around racing. Being in that seat and being in that position, do you think that has ultimately helped you more in your endeavors running a track and prepping tracks?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I've even like, it's even been a time where I had stopped racing for a while and made some changes to some programs that I was running and thought it was a good idea. And then, would get in one, my dad's car, one of my car or whatever, and then go race it and be in that event and be like, this is stupid. Like, I don't like how this is ran. Like, maybe the way you run your buybacks, you know what I mean? A certain way or whatever. So being in the driver's seat and really seeing what it's like to make that pass down the track, you get to see, hey, is there a bump? Hey, is the track prep crap? Is it going away or whatever? I've had that time and time again. I've had a guy come up to me and be like, track, da-da-da. And I'm like, here's all my tickets. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to tell you, bud. So being in the driver's seat, I guess kind of it's cheating, if you will. If you want to be serious about it, because you get to see the inside and what you need to improve on firsthand. But you have to be open-minded. If you go into this and this is me and I'm the greatest, manager out there and I'm just my program's always working. If they don't like it, they can hit the gate and all that. Not success, man. Drag racing and managing, it's like 51% you're winning because everything's always 50-50. You can have a driver's meeting and say, hey, I'm going to do it this way, raise your hand. And you'll have 50%. Well, I want to do it this way and 50%. And then you're sitting there going, well, I don't even know what to do now. So being in the driver's seat has really helped me understand what rules need to be in place, how things can be manipulated. I know different ways that you can manipulate the tree as far as staging battles and stuff like that. If you know the rules, you can play the rules in your favor. Well, when guys are out there playing these games and they're caught on it, I'm the one that can go, bro, come on. I know what you're doing here. Take that, go on back to your trailer, drink your beer, and I'll see you tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, come on, let's not do this right now. And And also to understand on the bad side of that, that I'm very competitive myself. So I have been that guy that I've gotten out and probably said something that I shouldn't have said. So when somebody does that to me, I'm kind of like, hey, bro, I know you're in the heat of the battle right now. Go over there and think about it for a second. I'm gonna think about it for a second. Let's come back and we'll talk about this like men, because if we talk about it like we are right now, it ain't gonna be good, because I'm not like that and you're coming at me like it ain't a good recipe for what we're trying to accomplish here. So it allows me to see why that guy's feeling like that, because I've been in them situations. You know what I mean? So I think it's really key. But then on the other side of it, man, it's a battle, because people for some reason think because if you're a track manager now, you can like be perfect on the tree all the time, or you got this crazy switch under the dash of your car that you can turn the wind light on all the time. And it's not. A lot of times when I'm racing at my own programs, I'm making passes in the car, really, because my head's in 500 other directions. I'm making sure everything's going good. There's been times I've been in the car, like pulling in the burnout box, and somebody comes over to me and like, so what lane's buyback in? I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah, let me shut it off and I'll help you. You know what I mean? And you have to, it's my job. If I'm racing somebody, and I've had it happen, if I'm racing something and you have a malfunction, you're winning. Like, yeah, it's just nature of the beast. You know what I mean? If it's something to where you think it needs to be a rerun or whatever, you know what? I'm just going to let you just go ahead, man, because so it's one of them things to where being in the seat, it helps you all the way around, because you understand everything that takes place from all aspects, you know, not only on the promoter side, but the opposite side of the fence. You know, there's a lot of times when I'm actually, when I managed it, I'd get on my scooter and I'd go watch from different parts of the racetrack. You know, I'd go sit in the stands and just kind of see what was going on. I'd go up, uh, there's some tracks you can go up on the towers. I'd go up in there and just kind of look at everything and see how parking is and how this is, and just kind of see how everything's moving, especially in busy times if you can, because that's when you know that you need to make different changes and you can kind of see things. That's a difference between a successful manager and a non-successful one. Taking notes and then making changes. You can have an event and it not be successful, but you can make changes and make it a successful one. But you have to be willing to take the notes and make these changes and continue to make it better. Nobody's event is great. I mean, they're always building. I mean, Jason Miller, he's probably got a notebook. I mean, that guy takes notes on like everything. So, I mean, there's plenty of, he's one of the top tier ones out there. I mean, he is, he's just very, very, he got that from Royce. Him and Royce are note-taking guys. I mean, they walk around with voice recorders all the time, and hey, you know, I have to fix this and I have to fix that, which is a great idea, you know. And so, being in the driver's seat gives you the other side of that. And when you're out there sitting in the stands, you can go, hey, you know, I don't like this, or we need to get the guys down here in groundskeeping to clean up down here because sitting here it looks kind of whatever, or so on and so forth. So, putting yourself in the driver's seat, putting yourself in the stands, putting yourself in your customers' situations is always successful for any business. You know what I mean? And so I do it, but in the same hand, I have to watch, like I was saying, I have to watch because you get people complaining about it. So you have to have that fine line of checking out your product without chasing people away from your product because they think you have an unfair advantage because it is your product. You know, he's going to spray his lane a little better and make sure it's fine, or vice versa, even though I don't do anything like that. Like, beat me fair and square. You know, I've waited for people. People have been broke and I've sat there and they're like, go ahead and go. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, we'll race at the end of the race, at the end of the round or whatever. Like, I want you to beat me fair and square. That's how I am. Like, I don't want no gimmies and that stuff. So there's pros and cons to driving, but I feel there's more pros. And as long as you don't make it a everyday thing, you know. My dad's track, it's a small little track. I ran the bracket series there, and I was always in the top ones. You know, I ran for the championship a time or two, never won, but I was in the hunt. Nobody that ever thought anything out of the way to me because I was very fair to everybody, you know. And I always was a gentleman. So I mean, bringing the old school like things this country was built on, like, be a gentleman, be nice to people, you know, and that gets you far, and especially in drag racing, you know, listen to somebody's problem. If they have a problem, listen to it for a second. Don't always assume that they're just out there complaining. I mean, there's people that complain every day and what we do, but have an open mind, you know, and put yourself, and if you don't race, put yourself in that man's shoes. He goes out there and works 40 plus hours a week and spends his hard-earned money on his race car, and that's his out. You don't know what he's going through in his personal life. That could be what he's doing right now to get by. That's his out. And you go there and you treat him like a fool. What kind of fool are you at the end of the day? You know what I mean? So it's one of them things you just have to be a good person, man, and listen to people, be open-minded, and put yourself in your customer shoes in any business for that matter.
Well, Jimmy, I have one last question for you. A lot of people don't realize this, but on the Dragzine podcast, we have a magical checkbook that we can open up that gives people unlimited funds. And
sign me up.
I am giving you this magical checkbook and unlimited funds to build the perfect racetrack. Wherever you need, any place, we're going to make it happen. What would you do to build the perfect racetrack? What's it going to have?
Actually, I think I get a chance to go to a perfect racetrack. We're working on some stuff overseas, and from what I hear, they're kind of the perfect racetracks. And that's the same. I guess that puts in a nutshell. If you want an unlimited budget racetrack, they're already building them and they're on the other side of the world. And them places are fantastic, from what I'm hearing. And I guess it's something in the sand or whatever with the concrete, but it's everyone over there. Tyler went over there. Tyler went to Kuwait. In January, and we were supposed to go back over there and do some other stuff, but COVID came around and knocked all that out of the water. So I never got a chance to go back over, and hopefully I get to in 2021. But he went over there and he says, Jimmy, he says, it's stupid dumb. He's like, you can mess around over there and the track pulls 500 and you didn't even do anything to it. He's like, he ran street cars on it for two days straight, street tire cars. And this track was still just as pretty as could be. Street tire cars over here on a racetrack, you get you have 100 of them and you got bald spots this big and you're scraping and you're trying to line them up over there on top of the photo cells off the racetrack. You know what I mean? Let them run down the return road because they're tearing my work all up. We're over there. So unlimited funds, I guess, would be transport everything they have over there over here. And it really boils down to, I mean, they're just turning it into a huge business. I mean, them places over there, they have, they're their own everything. Their hotels. I think Kuwait Motor Town right now has its own hotels, its own casinos. There's a Starbucks on the property. Every form of motorsports is there. So when you're really getting into unlimited funds, that's what you need to do because you need to get into every form of motorsports. My son's big in F1. F1 compared to drag racing is like,
oh, we're just a tiny little speck.
It's like T-ball compared to the major leagues. You know what I mean? And I mean, these guys are racing around in the cars, and the crew chief's telling them what's wrong with the car as they're driving them. You know what I mean? It's just unreal. So, I would have to have all forms of motorsports there just to be able to go through. You can even see some of your tracks still now with, like, especially down south, they're doing the mud bogs. You know, Tyler has been a VMP. They got the mud bog. So you because it's entertainment. I mean, people fail to remember this. Drag racing 101. We are in the business of entertaining. You know, and that's why you have what you have. That's why there's flow racing. That's why there's all that, because it's entertainment. And you guys know on the flip side of that, when you're trying to shoot a show, you're going through the same thing that a promoter and a track manager is going through. How do we entertain our fans? How do we help this track and this promoter entertain the fans to make this race look like it's something? Because I'm sure you've probably been to some races and it's been like, what are we doing here? Like, how are we going to make, like, we're supposed to make this thing look huge and there's nobody here. How do we do this? And it comes to a point where a good team will come together and make it happen. And you and I have been to some races that we've had to do that, you know, and so it goes from, like I said, all entities, from the camera crew to the ticket person. I can't tell you how many times I've worked a gate. I've literally done everything. I've worked a gate. I mean, and it's one of the things, you have to be wherever you have to be. And if you can let a racer come in the gate happy, you're doing well. If you bring him in the gate and he's already mad, it's almost impossible to make him happy from that time on out, because more than likely that same racer is going to go down there. Somebody done pulled in his parking spot. You know what I mean? So it's unreal. So it's really just how can you make your customer happy from the minute they come through the gate, whether they're a racer with $1 million operation or they're your spectator coming in, bringing for the first time their kids, you know? And a lot of that is time management. You know, when I would take my family, and you have little kids, 9, 10 o'clock, they're done, and when they start nagging on mom's done. And then she's going to dad. And if you're trying to run a show until 1 a.m, dad's not happy about this because at 10 o'clock, he's got to leave. So we as track operators, managers, promoters got to keep in mind of what our clientele wants, and they can't be all night. Now, if you have grudge racing, of course, you're not going to have your 10-year-old there. So that's we're out there nighttime racing, doing what we do, But unlimited funds, I would definitely have all forms of racing there. Definitely all concrete. Main thing, I mean, you have your concrete asphalt, but definitely all concrete surface. Anymore, man, honestly, I mean, quarter mile racing's there, but it's as fast as the cars are getting, it's just falling off more and more and more and more. I mean, more so now you do have NHRA, and bracket racing is really the only thing you're at now. I mean, even in the Northeast here, some of the stuff that was quarter miles cut back, and not to mention it helps with noise. Believe it or not, right here in Maryland, we cut back to 8th mile racing at the track my dad was at because of noise complaints. They're only hearing that car for part of second gear rather than it winding all the way out in high gear now. You know what I mean? And we noticed a difference in the calls that we would get complaints between our quarter mile racing and half mile racing. So we were looking at it, the longevity of the racetrack, we have to cut it back to quarter mile racing, and then it goes in the parts factor for your bigger races. It's too expensive to run these cars quarter mile. So I'd still go quarter mile racing just to kind of keep it open to everybody. Now, is this kind of staff and everything, or is it just facility?
Just the facility. What are you putting in there?
Bathrooms have to be par. I mean, back to mom and kids. There's so many racetracks I go to, and the bathrooms are terrible. And it's if you want me to pay money to come watch your show all day, and I can't go in the bathroom and use the bathroom and feel like I'm not going to catch a disease, what do you do? How can you expect me to be a repeat customer? Because the next time I go back, it's, man, well, now I got to go there. And if I have to use the bathroom, I got to leave the premises to go somewhere to feel halfway decent. I mean, so bathrooms are key. I do like the scoreboards Galat has. They're pretty cool.
Don't forget about concessions.
I don't know. Race surface is about me. It's all about racing surface for me. After that, you can hand out tickets out of a porta potty. I don't care. I just want to go fast.
Well, Jimmy, our time here is coming to a close, and I like to give my guests their ability to pull the old school John Force and thank all their sponsors and tell people where to find them at. So the floor is yours, my friend. Tell people what you got going on and where they can learn more about it.
Yeah. I'm headed this weekend, April 24th to the 27th, I believe, or something like that. I don't remember the dates. The Tyler's OSCR. I'm back at Tyler's again for the next first week, or May 1st for what is that? Grudge race with Peso and them. Really, I think VMP. They do a lot for me. Tyler does a lot for me. I'd like to thank Russell Miller and them for having me back there this weekend, Keith and all of them at Woodstock. I'd like to thank VP Racing Fuels and Jason Ruckert. He does a lot for me with traction compounds and so on and so forth. My mom and dad, my family, everybody like that. Everybody's kind of been my support, and it's tough when you're on the road and trying to run, making sure life takes care of itself behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I've been home. I'll be home one day in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So it takes a lot of support from home as well. So I'd like to thank my family and all that good stuff, and my racers. Without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. You got people like Mike Hill and all them guys that gave me a chance. He was one of the first guys I've ever worked for that gave me a chance to do this. So I really thank the tracks that allow me to come in, because it's kind of a sticky deal there, not to be pun intended, but where they come in and sometimes they could take it as I make them look bad, and they don't want to do that sometimes. So for these tracks that are allowing me to come in, I try to go there and I be open-minded and try to help as well, make drag racing great again, if you will. So I want to thank everybody for just giving me the opportunity, really.
And of course, we've got to thank our sponsors, AFR, Procharger, and Performance Distributors, for helping make the podcast possible. Jimmy, thanks so much for being on the show, and look forward to seeing some events this year.
No problem, man. Thank you very much. Hope I didn't mess up too much. I know I had power go out and a million other things and stuff like that. So I appreciate
it. It happens. We roll with it here, man. We roll with it. See you soon, man.
Yes, sir, Brian. Take care.